Cali, hey, how you doing? I've got your work up right here. I was reading your writing. Um, we got the TV, right? So thank you so much for your submission. Let's jump over to the composition. I've got it open right here in a separate window, so we'll take a look at this. Now, I think that you've done some smart things here, and basically you got the idea, right? So the idea here, based on our lectures, is we're looking at the image for clues that can enhance the layout. So the more we can create these similarities between the image and the layout, borrowing visual attributes from the image to help to compose the layout, the more interesting things are going to be. And we've seen that. We saw that in the lectures for this week, specifically on a couple of those examples that are just using wonderfully that Volkswagen ad. Wonderful job of taking attributes of the background image and using them to assist you in compiling the composition. So I think you've done that here. I think you've done a good job. You've taken the main image and you're borrowing from the main image. So over here in your headline, you've borrowed the rectangle and you've configured your type accordingly, right? Then over here, you've borrowed the square shape of the TV itself to include, and then also the shape of the TV here, here, and here. And that's okay, right? But the problem that brings is this, is that the image itself is a series of rectangles and squares. You have to admit it's not the most compelling image in the world. So you are very, very limited as to what you can take from this image to use to assist you in the composition. Basically, the only thing you have to take from this image are rectangles and squares. And we see rectangles and squares. The problem is that placing things in rectangles and squares in graphic design is not typically a great practice, because what that does is it creates a degree of separation from the element and the surrounding composition. By placing it in squares and rectangles, it kind of creates a degree of separation, reducing the harmony and the relationship the type has with the overall picture plane, with the overall composition, right? So that to me is a problem, and I think the problem points to the image itself. If you want to use a TV, try to find a really super interesting image of a TV, or shoot the TV yourself in a way that presents it a really interesting composition of the TV, where it has visual elements that you can take out of it. Now, I'm not so sure I would include this screen, because I think this is kind of impeding hierarchy, because there's a lot of activity over here, a lot of visual weight over here that doesn't have to do with the composition. It has to do with what's being seen on the screen of this TV at this particular point in time. So I don't think I would include that screen on the TV. So I would say at this point, I don't want to sound discouraging, but I honestly, I think, Callie, sorry, I think at this point, I would reconsider your approach here. And I'm going to show you an example. Maybe it will give you some ideas, but um, let me do that right now. So let me do that. But first of all, let's talk about typography. So in your typography here, Design in Everyday Life, I think this is done very well. Your kerning here is beautiful. Letter spacing type, word spacing is done very well here. This is a little bit difficult to read. And the reason this is difficult to read is because this is reversed type, meaning this is light type on a dark background. Traditional type is typically set at a dark type color with a lighter color background. Whenever you use a light color type with a dark color background, that's called reverse type. We see it here, captions, and here. Now, when you use reverse type, it's really important that you remember to open up your kerning, your tracking, and your leading. That's the space between individual letters, as well as the space in between lines of type. And the reason being is because it will eliminate this kind of visual vibration caused by the increased contrast placing light color type on a dark color background. It'll make it much easier to read. It'll make it more readable as well as more legible. So again, if you're going to use reverse type, remember to always increase your tracking and your leading. HBO Now right there, it's a perfect chance right there to use small caps. And then 30 right there, it's a perfect chance to use old style numerals. It looks like you reduced the type size of the 30. If you did, that's wonderful. If you didn't, that's a pretty good typeset right there. But consider old style numerals. Those are all covered in the announcements area for this week, so you might review those. Um, Okay, so again, boy, let me show you the example. And again, Callie, I don't want to sound discouraging. I know this isn't the most glowing review, but I really want you to think about this and think about and really take a look at this and ask yourself a question. Is this super interesting? Is this a really interesting composition? And let me show you an example. And I'm going to give you this example, and I'm going to describe why it's so successful, and hopefully you can get some ideas from there. If you want help on this, just let me know. But I definitely would recommend that you reconfigure and rethink this. So let me show you the example. This is Design in Everyday Life for this coffee machine. Now let me show you what's happening here. So the main image is excellent. We got the main image. The designer sampled color out of the main image for this. This is a really nice typographic composition. Wonderful variety in here. That's gorgeous right there. And then you see wondering, so we've got these dots mimicking the dot and the eye, and we got these dots here. And they may seemingly seem like it's a random choice, but it's not, and I'll explain that in a second. So then we take a look at the image, right? So what's happening in the image that this designer used to assist the composition? Well, the first thing we see is that everyday and design are just about the same width, right? So if we take that width, we can see that it is also identical to this width of the coffee machine. And that's not by chance, that's by design. So that's really interesting right there. Conversely, we've got this circle here mimicking the circle in the image. We've also got these three circles right here mimicking these three circles from the logo, right? We've also got color continuation, and the strokes on these circles are a continuation of this color here. And this color here, again, is a continuation from this part of the coffee machine. All right, all is well so far, right? So we've got this typeset paragraph right here. It looks pretty good. Character count is nice. Letting and kerning look good. So that's great, right? So that leaves these dots. And so, we've also got the little captions. They're associated with each individual. Very clear. Hierarchy is crystal clear. So what brings us to these dots? So these dots, I think, are really, really effective. Number one is they're creating leading lines for the composition. Number two, this little dot right here, this series of dots mimics what would be coming out of here. So if this were brewing right now, there would be little coffee pouring out there. So we can see that. So all together, it's just a really super compelling and interesting composition. Basically, that just these little elements that the designer has taken out of this image to use in assisting the setup for the composition. So think about it, really think about it. And as I said, I always get so concerned when I'm really super critical on a design critique, because I don't want you to think I'm being discouraging. You know me by now, Kelly. That is not my style. So I just really want you to think about things here and consider recomposing, maybe even considering new images, or maybe even a new object altogether. It's up to you. If there's anything you want to run by me between now and the time for final submission, that's great. Please do, and I'll be more than glad to provide another critique. And the most important thing, of course, if you have any questions at all, please let me know immediately so that we can continue work. All right. Great start. As I said, I think what you've got here, you're doing about as much as you can, given the image that is really, really, I would consider it to be not the most compelling image I've seen. I think that it all starts with the choice of the image that you're going to use for your object. So think about everything I've said. Rest on it. Let it sink in. Watch this video again in a couple hours, and it will sink in. And these things that I'm saying will make very good sense to you, I promise. If you have any questions, get with me immediately so we can continue concentrating on working moving forward. All right, great job. Thank you very much.